We're Christians, but we're not disciples. That we should believe the gospel story, but not submit to the lordship of Jesus, and that we should trust in the salvation that's offered to us without inhabiting the lifestyle of salvation, living in it. Because Jesus came to put a particular way of life in front of us. It's not just that we get to go to heaven when we die. It's that we begin to live as citizens of heaven right now. That we'd adopt a different life, a different culture, a different government, a different king. That we become different persons because of the teaching of our Lord. And so, being Christian is great. Being a disciple is essential. Do you see the difference I'm making? There was a time, I think, when those words were synonyms. But I think so many people have lived as Christians who were not disciples that those words don't mean the same thing necessarily. I think we need to be disciples of Jesus. Jesus did not tell us to go and make Christians. Do you know that? In fact, the word Christian wasn't used until long after He had ascended to the Father's side. That word was used by outsiders who were insulting us. Do you know that? Jesus said to go and make disciples. And what is a disciple? A disciple is someone who listens to the teaching of Jesus and lives by it. That is the means of salvation. That baptism helps us to become disciples. And that then we live as disciples. And we have so prioritized discipleship that sometimes we negate or ignore and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. But that's part of the deal. Baptism gets us into this life, and then we listen to Jesus, and we live it. Jesus did not say, if anyone would come after me, then let him take a very short bath, have a very small snack, sit on a pew, and give money and listen to a boring talk. You know, listen, I have just minimized a lot of very important things. Baptism is a big deal. And when I say very short bath, I mean to trivialize it because there's an approach that you can trivialize it. And if that's all that is, then that's trivial. This is huge. It's a very big deal. But you can do it in a way that trivializes it. Because if you're not the thing that makes these things sacred is the call to discipleship. If you live in a way that rejects the discipleship teaching of Jesus, you're rejecting these things too. You're making them into just trivial acts that are not important. And what you're doing right now isn't real in your life. Jesus has called you to something. He said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. He's calling you to a life of discipleship. Christianity without discipleship is death. It's death. Because it's a pretense. You don't want to live a pretense. What you want to do is die to yourself and live with Christ. You do not want the shiny plastic people syndrome. Folks, people that are Christians who aren't disciples are vulnerable to the devil all day long. They live lives that they're building, that they're going to destroy. They're going to shipwreck themselves. You don't want that. You want the life of self-denial. You want the life that is resurrected in Jesus Christ, following Him and denying yourself. That's the life you want. Why are so many Christians mean-spirited? Because they're not disciples. I mean, you cannot be a disciple of Jesus and a jerk at that. Well, now wait a minute. Yes, you can. Because if you look at the Gospels, you see that so often the disciples are stumbling and falling down. How many times does Peter stick his foot in his mouth? Yes, you can, but you know you shouldn't be. And not only are you at work on it, but so is He. That God and you together are working on this place that's out of step with Him. and I put mean-spirited there. I'll tell you what, though, if that's the main characteristic of your life and you think it's good, that's not the life of discipleship. If your life is about attacking people that aren't Christians and beating them up, and that's going to make them be Christian. What? And you want to help people be Christian, live as a Christian in front of them. Show them that you've got something worth having. Then maybe they'll listen. You know, and you can take out mean-spirited and put in whatever kind of wretched thing you want in there. If you dedicate your life to awful things, that's not discipleship. If you dedicate your life to yourself, that's not discipleship. Jesus is calling, and He's calling not just to the world, but to His church. And He's calling to us to be serious about our faith, which is why we are coming back to this mountain, why we've been doing it all year long, coming again and again to the mountain, to listen to the Lord and say, teach me. My heart's broken. It's not whole. My heart's not like yours, Jesus. I want your heart. Teach me. I want to be your disciple, Jesus. That's why we come here again. Our broken human hearts need to listen to the teaching of Jesus if we're going to be raised from the graves of our lives to truly live, to become more than just somebody who gets to go to heaven. Look, if you had to go to heaven and you were going to stay the same person you are right now, would it still be heaven? Would it be heaven for other people if you were there? You know, the life that Jesus is calling us to is where we live as citizens of that great place already right here, filled with forgiveness and grace and love here and now. And that's why we come and we listen to it. We listen to what He has to say. Because the world says stupid stuff. Like this. If you want to be truly happy, you must follow your heart. That sounds so wise, doesn't it? Because you see people that do that follow their heart, you know, that follow their dreams, that go where their vision takes them, and they seem so successful, don't they? Have you ever met somebody who really followed their heart, that really had everything work out perfectly? That's what our culture tells us, though. Anybody familiar with this? Have you seen this movie? I love this. This is the movie Frozen. And right now, every girl under the age of 14 is about to get mad at me because I'm going to dog on Frozen just a little bit. But this is a wonderful movie. I really enjoyed it. I want to say that up front. I especially enjoyed the star of the movie, which was this guy. But this is Ella, right? That's right? Elsa. See how well I know this movie. I'm totally competent to give commentary on this movie. Elsa has magical powers. Spoiler alert. Elsa has magical powers that are dangerous. She can freeze things. And by a long and complicated thing, she comes to think of herself as dangerous. And she doesn't know, but she locks her kingdom in a state of perpetual winter, and she flees because she sees herself as dangerous to those that she loves. But throughout her young life, she's been suppressing her power, pretending to be other than who she is. She sings this great song that is the anthem to people who are tired of other people's junk. I am so sick of putting up with you, and so I'm going to just let it go, you know. But, you know, and it's a beautiful song, and man, does whoever the artist, I don't know who voices Elsa, but she has a wonderful voice. And it's a beautiful song. It's wonderfully performed. But if you listen to the words of that, it will break your heart. And the sad thing is that I think an awful lot of our people in our culture that are trained to just follow your heart are hearing it as a hopeful and wonderful song of liberation. Boy, if you listen to it, it's not that. It's a song of somebody incredibly frustrated with pretending to be who they're not, and they suddenly break down all of the barriers, all the dams, but their solution is to run away from everybody. It's a heartbreaking song. But I'll tell you the reason I'm talking about this. She actually sounds an awful lot like some Christians I've met. Or some Christians that maybe I've been at some point in my life. She says, don't let them in. Don't let them see. Be the good girl you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know. And the reason everything breaks down for her is because, well, now they know. I can't hide anymore. I can't pretend. And so she's just going to chuck everything that she's been and run off and be herself. You ever met a Christian who did that? Ever been the Christian that did that? That shiny, plastic Christian experience. Conceal, don't feel. Don't let anybody know what's going on in me. Don't let anybody know. I have to hide and hide my sins, because if they know who I really am, they won't love me. I can't let anybody in here with me. It's too dangerous. I'm too dangerous to them. They're too dangerous to me. I have to keep you far, far away. It won't possibly be safe. You know what happens to people that live Christianity like this? They're not disciples. And they break. And sadly, they may not really break until after they die, but this is a life that leads to death. You know, or it can lead to this. It's time to see what I can do to test the limits and break through. No right, no wrong. No rules for me. I'm free. Let it go. Let it go. I'm one with the wind and sky. Let it go. Let it go. You'll never see me cry. I have never met anyone who had that response to life that didn't cry. I have never met anybody who was there. And you know, she might say, you'll never see me cry. And she might be telling the truth, because she hadn't really changed all that much. She's still hiding from everybody. They won't see it. That doesn't mean she's not doing it. Have you met the person whose Christianity collapsed? And it broke and fell in on themselves, and they looked at their broken life and said, well, that didn't work. Maybe I'll try something else. Maybe I'll go somewhere else. Not only do they cry, but they cause tears in everybody's life around them. You ever been there? And it's too often the solution here is just build a bigger, better wall. That's what Elsa does. She builds a whole castle off by herself. This is not the way to live. But why do we do it? Well, we do it because we're living a Christianity of maintaining an appearance, of protecting the real self from what's going on, and keeping it all clean. Jesus encountered people that did that, and He said, you're whitewashed tombs. See, the outside looks great. You've cleaned it all up. You've made it look beautiful. But inside there's dead men's bones. A Christianity of pretense, a Christianity of doing the right things, a Christianity of never submitting really to God. A Christianity that believes all the facts, but doesn't ever let it permeate the soul, where it never really becomes real. It doesn't make it down into the heart, into the soul. It stays at a place where I maintain my behaviors and I maintain my appearance. It must go deeper than that. An externally imposed moral system can never really survive. An externally imposed belief system, an externally imposed religion. This is where God stays far away from you and says, do this, don't do that. And you say, all right. Well, we will eventually reject what's imposed upon us from without, unless it becomes part of who we are, down in the heart. Then we will eventually reject it. Only a belief system that is grounded in what is real, what we truly and authentically believe, only that will guide our lives throughout our lives. If we want to make it through all of life as Christian, we have to come to actually believe that God is real. And not just as an idea, but that He is a reality that you can count on. That what He says is true. That you can trust Him. And I mean at the level of your checkbook. all the way down to where you actually live, He has to become real to you. Now, I'm going to suggest that there are an awful lot of Christians approaching their faith the same way Elsa did. In fact, I think it's a threat that hits all of us at some point and at some level, where we just can't let them see what's really going on. And by them, I mean you, each other, I mean God. I've got to keep up the show. I've got to keep up with the assembly line of my life. I've got to keep it listed. All fall down. Do you know this danger? You ever been threatened by it? How do I deal with this? Because the reason I put up this plastic pretense, the reason that we put up any of this at all, this facade, this pretend self, is because deep down inside, either we don't really believe God is real, just that Christianity is a pretty good way to live, but is God real? Or maybe we don't really believe that He loves us and that He'll be there for us to take care of us when the wheels come off. We don't really trust Him. Well, how do I do that? How do I change that? Because this has to do with how I see reality. And since I can't change my eyeballs, I can't change my heart, how do I deal with this? This is why Jesus is going to talk to us about our treasures, about our eyes and what we set them on, and about our Master. He's putting in front of us choices that we can make that treat God as real, that we can only really make if we accept a particular understanding of reality. You can only do these things if you believe that they're safe. You can only choose a treasure that you believe is actually worth having. You will only set your eyes on something that you think is good if you really think it's good. And so Jesus is saying, choose these behaviors to retrain your heart. Jesus says, don't lay up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth or rust destroy and thieves can't break in and steal. What Jesus is saying to us is that what you value is going to control your behaviors. Do you choose to value the things of this earth that are transitory? They are all transitory. Show me the thing that you've bought and used for a decade that looks like it did when you bought it. Is there anything? I mean, a moth does not have to get into it before it starts coming apart, does it? How many of you are driving the car that you bought when you were a kid? That's ridiculous. Of course you're not driving that car. No one is driving that car. That car has been melted down and made into a toaster, am I right? Nothing here lasts. Nothing. And yet people invest their whole lives into having nice things. Have you ever met the person who wants to show you the great thing they've got? And as if it makes something of them. Have you ever been the person? When you've got the nice new trinket or gadget or car. If we invest our hearts and our lives into these things, we are investing in things that by their nature are not permanent. And we are training our hearts not to believe in God. We are training our hearts to believe that I can take care of myself. I can provide nice things for myself. I will chase those things. I will treasure them up. And they will give meaning to my life. Have you ever bought the thing that you thought, now when I have this, then my life will be great because I'll be able to do this and this and this. And then you get that and, it does do something great. You're like, well, that's really cool. And then a month later, you're like, yeah, meh. Am I right? And things don't make anything of our heart, and yet we pursue them, we chase them. And Jesus is helping us to look into our heart to say, if you're doing that, what do you believe? What do you think is true? If you're chasing those things, then what is foundationally at the center of who you are, what you really believe? Because you can believe these ideas, but if you're not living your life on them, do you really believe those ideas? If they don't impact you at the center of who you are. See, because what you treasure defines where you're putting your heart. Are you putting your heart into a place where you can't lose it? And what are the treasures of heaven? I mean, how do you store? I can't put an iPod or an iPad or a nice TV or a motorcycle or a car or a mansion. I can't put those on layaway for me and have them be waiting for me when I park it. Those are not going to be there. What are the treasures of heaven? Well, everybody look to your right. Everybody look to your left. Treasures of heaven. God is the treasure of heaven, and His image in the people around you, the relationships and the love that you have. Are you giving your life away for things, or are you giving your life away for people and love? Because when you die, the things are gone. And in fact, long before you die, they're going to be gone. But when you die, when the eschaton happens and Jesus comes and He raises you from the dead, guess what you're going to have? The people you loved and cherished. That carries with you. If they're Christian, they go with you into eternity. And God Himself and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit and the heart that you have within your chest, the nature of it. Is it loving? Is it kind? Is it able to forgive wrong? That you get to have forever. Are you a person worth being? Set your heart unto treasures that can't be taken. And the thing is, if you do that, you may have to give up treasures here. Because you might end up spending your money differently. You might end up caring for hungry people or something, instead of buying the upgrade of the iPod. But where is your treasure? And what is that money buying for you? And what kind of heart are you making? When Jesus talks about eyes being the lamp of the body, so often we want to pop that out of context and make it into something about the purity of the heart and the soul. The ancient person wouldn't have done that. When the ancient person heard the words bad eye, they would have immediately thought of the evil eye. It's an ancient concept. If you have envy in your heart and you look at somebody else, ancient people, in fact Africans, they still believe this. And Middle Easterners, they still believe this. That envy is a spiritual force that can pass out of your eye and curse other people. That's what the evil eye is. That's why if somebody has lost a baby, you don't want them looking at yours. You want to hide your baby from a mother who's recently lost a child, because the envy in her heart could curse and kill your kid. That's the belief in the ancient world. What Jesus is addressing here is envy, where you look at what you don't have, and you fill up your heart with the longing for the things that you want. And Jesus says if the eye is sound, if it's not doing that, then the whole body fills up with light. If your relationship with the physical world is not filled with envy, but filled with love, if you're able to look at other people and what they have and rejoice, if you're able to look at other people and see them as valuable, your heart fills up with light. You become more and more and more like God. The more you're able to look at people with kindness and goodness. And so you train your heart, you train your eye to look for people and ways to do good for them, ways to care about them, ways for them to matter. But if you train your eye to look at other people and either the things that they've got or the station of life that they inhabit, and you want it. You want it for yourself. You covet it. then what you're doing is you're using your eye to fill yourself up with things that are unlike God, and you're filling yourself up with darkness. So you're intentional about how you look at other people and other things. You don't do that. You set your eyes in love, and you try to look for ways to love people, and you're going to fill your heart up with love. And the thing is, if you set your eyes on what other people have, you tend to move in the direction of your most dominant thoughts. Did you know that? The more you think in a direction, the more you'll move that way. So if you envy people, the thing that they have, you might try really hard to get their stuff, and you might get it. I mean, not theirs, but stuff like it, or stuff that I'm not suggesting you'll steal, but you might be able to get the wealth you're chasing that you see that they have and you don't. And that's what you'll have. That and a heart filled with darkness. If you set your heart on love, you're not going to move that direction. You might impoverish yourself. You might not move forward the way that the Joneses do if you stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. But you'll be setting yourself in a direction where your heart fills up with light. And which do you want? He says, no one can serve two masters, for he'll either hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You can't serve both God and money. Now, when he says you can't serve two masters, I actually have some experience with this. I had a time when I had several jobs, and they all had a lot of demands on me. And I found that the job that I actually enjoyed the most got an awful lot more of my time. And the job that I enjoyed the least got enough of my time that I didn't get fired. And not much more. Because the stuff that pulled on my heart, I cared about. I set myself into. And the stuff that I didn't really like or enjoy, I should have been fired from that job. It was some substandard work. What Jesus is saying is, you can't serve God and the choices that move you towards this world. You can't do it. When he says you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other, he's not saying you'll have horrible feelings toward it. He's just saying you'll neglect its needs. You won't do what it needs for you to do. So you have to choose. Are you going to be God's disciple, Jesus' disciple, and do the things that are expected of you? Or are you going to be America's disciple and do the things she expects? Are you going to be a consumer? Are you going to be a materialist? Are you going to focus on life in the here and now and getting ahead of the Joneses like America tells you that's the fruitful life, go do it? Or are you going to pursue the Christ and His self-giving way of life? Because you can believe that Jesus is real and be the world's disciple. Do that. But you'll be despising His way of life. You'll be neglecting its demands. And the love of your heart will move more and more this way. You might be a Christian, but you might not be a disciple. All of this Jesus is putting in front of us so that we might make choices. These are not just ideas. It's about making choices. And if we make the choices Jesus is calling us to make, we will disadvantage ourselves in this world. Do not make any mistakes. You will not enrich yourself in the ways of planet Earth if you devote yourself to the ways of heaven. I have a friend who he was an electrician, and all of his contemporaries, all of his friends were buying boats, and taking these long, extravagant vacations. Meanwhile, he was just barely scraping by and going, why can't I get ahead? And then one day it hit him. None of his friends go to church. None of them give anything. They don't give any money away. And he's like, oh, you're in my boat. I'd rather have you. See, he was choosing the things that couldn't be taken for a boat that will one day rot. He was choosing the things he couldn't lose and giving up the things that he couldn't keep. and he was realizing, I'm the better off for this. My life is better because I've made these choices. And suddenly all of the envy that he felt for all his, it just went away. But he realized that he had impoverished himself by the standards of his friends. By giving to church, by supporting church, he put himself behind. You will do that if you make the choices Jesus puts in front of you. But it's for the sake of greater good in the next world. It's for the sake of something that you cannot lose. You can't lose love, folks. It doesn't go away. It doesn't stop. It's eternal. You can't lose mercy and kindness. They inhabit your heart. You become that person. You can't lose those things. So you give up what you can't keep to gain what you can't lose. By doing this, you are training your heart. You are setting heaven's priorities in front of yourself and saying, I will not have their priorities. I won't do it. If I've bought a big house, it's for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. If I have a car, it's for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. If I've got nice things, it's to share. If I have money, it's to give away. If I have food, it's to feed. I am not going to make the priority choices they're making out there. I'm going to live differently. And as you make... And folks, each time you choose heaven over earth, you retrain your heart. You're bending it a little bit. You're whacking on the metal with a hammer, and it's taking the dents. But God is guiding your hand, and He is making something beautiful. And it might look awful beat up until we get heaven's perspective on it. But when we at last see what God has done through the choices we made in discipleship, by following Jesus, we'll see Jesus. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to look into yourself and see a person like Him? That's what He's training you to do. Throughout this sermon, He is self-describing. Be like Him. So don't do this. And if you're living here, stop. If your life is about a management of the outside, of appearances, it's time to start making choices to embrace reality. Don't do the plastic, fake Christian. Don't be a Christian who's not a disciple. Don't do this. Don't listen to this. Listen to this. If you want to be truly happy, then embrace reality, because reality is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the most real thing you know. And He teaches you to love, and He teaches you to be merciful, and He teaches you to be kind, and He teaches you to tell the truth, and He teaches you to tell the truth to your own stubborn heart that wants to chase things that will kill you. Don't do it. Let Jesus be your treasure. Set your eyes on Him. Let Him become your master, and you will live. Make choices that embrace reality. And if this morning you look into your own life and you say, that's not what I'm doing, it'll show up. You can see it. Are you really mean to people? No? Or are you really envious of people? Are you really lustful? Jesus was none of those things. If you look into your heart and you see, I'm a mess. Well, folks, you're not alone. We're all a mess. We're a mess He's cleaning up. But if you need our prayers, we want to pray for you. And if you need the care and the compassion of the church, let us know. And if you came to this place today and you came suffering, you came hurting, don't leave without us caring for you. We want to love you. I'm telling you the truth. Jesus loves you, and as His people, we want to do it too. And if you came to this place today and you're not a Christian, well, there's water right there. You can take a very short bath, and it will be much more than a very short bath in your life. It will be a transformative experience that you'll reflect on for the rest of your life. If this morning you're subject to the invitation of Christ, why don't you come right now while we stand and sing.
I need Thee every hour, most gracious Lord. Stay